Got it.
Your screen looks so much more fucking in focus than mine. You're just using your fucking phone, right?
Yeah. But nowadays phone.
Well, I have
Um,
an old days iMac, which apparently is on its last fucking legs, creaks its way from one application to another like it's fucking, I don't know, a wind sock in a snowstorm or something.
apparently, if you watch lots of porn on your phone, it'll do that. So it will. So
It's not that, yeah, no, that's not what this particular screen is for. Um, no, this is my iMac, which by now, of course, is you know becoming obsolete. But
So
anyway,
tell us,
stuff.
Primordial did two shows back to back. Have you ever done that before? Have you ever done two shows in one venue before? No.
Um, no, actually, I mean, it was an unusual concept. It was like a sort of theoretically pagan Celtic sort of festival, whatever that means. And then 7 or 8 local and French bands, and then we agreed to play a completely different set both nights. So we played 30 songs over 2 nights, and we thought, oh, this isn't going to.
Metallica, isn't it?
Yeah, we thought this isn't going to work. We're not big enough to do this or whatever. But it totally worked. There was over 300 people there both nights, and it sort of felt. And I said this to the guys at the weekend at the other gigs, which was like, it may seem that something that's going to happen next year in the metal scene is trying to think of something, not going to say extraordinary, but something out of the ordinary in a market. And I use that
Yeah.
in a horrible Gene Simmons way, but a city, an unusual city, something extraordinary in an unusual city, because it seems that like um, big city
I think
stuff,
that's
big
what
city
Jarvis
stuff
was
is.
trying to do with the thing in Derry, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think geographically within reason. I mean, a country like France does have a big enough scene, and like Rennes is, I guess, one of the biggest cities in that whole Brittany area. So
yep.
it's not unfeasible to think you could get 350 people who were within driving distance to Rennes, and
Yeah.
also cities which aren't being gutted by hotel gentrification, where people have to pay 200 quid to stay in for a night. Tickets aren't now €55, and there's just a general feeling of city inertia, because people don't live in the cities anymore, and so I think it's a kind of a,
I think it's a great idea,
yeah,
because we talked about this about how some bands, you know, can kind of, it's not that you're oversaturating the market, but it's more that people have so many ample opportunities to go and see you.
yeah,
Like, any sort of anything to make it a totally unique experience is obviously going to go down well.
yeah. I mean, I also think that like there's something going on between a city country divide that I feel is a post pandemic lockdown thing, and you can see the ticket sales that I see through the booking agency and through many of the other, just hearing from people anecdotally, um, shows that they thought would be, 50 to 100 pre-sales in a big city, a Paris or a Berlin or whatever, are now 5, 15, 20, but put the
Yep.
show in, I don't know, some place that doesn't get many shows, because everybody is out trying to sort of tour and make back up lost time. And I think that yeah, I mean, you can just see this by the list of tours that are currently being cancelled in the States, because in the midst of an energy crisis, people don't have the money to go to 4 shows a
Yeah.
week in Hamburg, or whatever.
Totally. And like people like are a lot more sensible than you give them credit for, even though Germans and stuff would be very hardcore about going to see a band 5 times in a row. If they don't have the money to go round the corner and see their favorite band, they're not going to go.
I think it's not even so much that they have the money to go to around the corner. I agree with you completely, but I think it's also people coming in from out the suburbs and the outside of the city into bigger cities are now, I fucking hate the city. I don't Nobody lives in the city anymore. There's no like, things are changing in cities all across the major ones in Europe. Dublin is the same, and it's putting people off coming in. Not only the cost of, hey, we can't get a hotel for less than fucking 150, €200, and so you just
Yeah.
can't afford to do that 4 nights a week. And I also think that Germans are just far more prudent with their money in what looks like a kind of long fucking winter of our discontent.
Yeah,
much more
but
than
like I think
Irish
the
people
Germans
are,
as
you know.
well, though, like they're still in a situation where there's still all the public services are still there from before COVID, whereas we don't have that now. Like after COVID, the bus network in Ireland is just fucked now. Like I used to be able to, or you could go to a gig in Dublin or Belfast and get the bus home at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and
Yeah, yeah.
that's gone now. You know, so like there are a lot of things that I probably would have mooched down to go and see Vector or something, but now it means going and staying over in somebody's
Yeah,
house in Rathfarnham, you know, and it's
yeah.
way more of a pain in the hole.
But I get the impression that that happens. That's been happening more than you think as well. Even in big cities that we look at and go, "Oh, their infrastructure is that much better." But then I talk to somebody from, say, Manchester or Leeds about going to a gig, and they're like, "You can't get back from Leeds city centre anymore to, like satellite towns at 1 or 2 in the morning, or it's harder to go from Paris. You miss the last tube. You blah blah blah." It just seems the whole everything that's involved in going out for that Tuesday night to a gig just makes it more and more less worth it, and it's expensive and it's whatever. So yeah, it's maybe this is a model that for next year is to pick an unusual venue, find an old church, pick an unusual city, and go 2 night stand. Not make it too expensive, and go. We're going to play two completely different sets over 2 different nights, and I don't know, do one a month might be better
Yeah.
than, I don't know, playing, again in a city like, for the fifth, sixth, seventh time, maybe. I mean,
Well,
I don't see
it's
any.
kind of hard to tell, isn't it? Because like different bands have different fan bases. Like if Exodus tried to do something like that,
Yeah,
and they're going to go and play, like unless they're going to go around playing Bonded by Blood every night, they can't really go 2 nights in Sheffield and play Impact is Imminent one of the nights, and
no.
you know,
Um,
um,
I mean, it might work for bands doing a classic album every night. If within reason, if it's within
yeah,
price, and with its, I mean, I'm not sure. Like what we just did in Rennes, I'm not sure if you could do that in London, unless, of course, you, for example, found a really, like, I remember seeing Woven Hand with Crippled Black Phoenix in an old church, and the whole atmosphere was just such an incredible thing to see Woven Hand like that. And you probably, if it was available to see them do 16 horsepower the night after, you would have stayed and gone to both nights. Woven Hand fans would have loved it.
yeah.
Um, Maybe it's something worth considering rather than then you don't
I
have any.
saw the composer guy Fabio Frizzi, who did all the '80s horror movies. He did 2 nights in the Unicorn Chapel in London. So he
Right, yeah.
did. So I think you do get people doing that kind of thing, but like with metal bands, it's so difficult because first off, you have to be the sort of band who can sell out one night of 350 people, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So when you guys are that kind of band and you have long songs, long set lists, so it's easier to do it. Whereas,
Yeah.
look at someone like, Daniel's Boys Onslaught there, like how the heck could they manage to do that? Like, unless you're going to go out and play the Force,
I'm not sure
people
that you
wouldn't come to the second
I'm
night.
not sure that you could do it. I'm not sure that the concept is really designed for short, sharp, shock, aggressive music. I think
Yeah.
for something meandering and dark and a bit, um, you know, a bit more, well, got a bit less elements of other or less traditional metal stuff in it. Maybe it's possible. I mean, you could go and see Candlemass doing Epicus one night, Nightfall the other. Like I said, yeah, I agree with you. I don't know whether it works for like a thrash metal band or maybe for a big
No.
classic heavy metal band or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and like that is the kind of thing, isn't it? Like if you were gonna go and see Priest, like do something like that, like what would they be doing? British Steel one night and Painkiller the next night. Like their set already has most of the elements of those in it, so it's not as
Yeah.
if I don't think they would be drawn a whole bunch of people who come out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, now I'm gonna go."
No, I mean, I think a band who could do it is something like Neurosis or something. If they played like Times of Grace and then they played something newer, you kind of need obsessive compulsive fans who feel like they'd be really, really missing out. I
Yep.
mean, are you feel like you're going to be missing out if you see Toxic Wolves on Friday, and then I can't remember the name of a song. If Impact is Imminent, I only listened to it 2 days ago. What's the one with the objection overruled or something, isn't it? Or
Yep.
is that not a accept?
No, that's well, they have an album called that as well, but Objection Overruled is the single from Impact is Imminent.
Oh yeah. What?
They had like they very briefly Exodus had like the worst mascot ever, who was like a gas station attendant who had like a melty face. Remember that guy? He was on the cover of their live album, and it was just like,
Oh yeah, like a little thrash metal kid or something with
yeah,
a spotty face or something.
yeah, epically bad mascot, like, you know, and obviously it lasted for about half an album tour, and they're like, okay, this isn't going to work.
I couldn't get through Impact as a minute. I tried to listen to it in the gym. It wasn't doing very much, but just try to listen to it, and it's weird. It almost sounds out of time. The reverb, whatever's on the snare, is so, and the drumming is so, I don't know,
It's very
cavernous
like, you know,
sounding.
like Ride the Lightning or something, where like the drums are kind of produced as a bit of an afterthought to the guitars. So the guitars are so loud and heavy that, you know, the drums are there, but like the timing of the music is all about the guitars. The drums are not there to keep the beat or anything, really, you know.
I mean, well, I think you're doing Ride the Lightning a disservice. But because it was just because I was on a bit of an Exodus buzz, and I was getting into the new album, and I was thinking, all right, okay, and then I went back, and then I just listened to the tightness of something like from the last however many years, and Impact is Imminent was just like, what's going on here? I can't just hear the it's just a terrible record. Anyway,
They must have been in a situation though where, like, because they'd signed to Capitol Records, Capitol were just like, okay, well, just do what you did with the last record, you know, and hopefully it'll be bigger, you know. But there was no plan to be like, right, okay, try and write this kind of song, or we'll get you on tour with this band. They were just like, let's see what happened. And I think Gary Holt actually said that he found out that it was the deal was a tax write off for Capitol. They had such a massive tax bill that they could chop it in two by signing something like Exodus for a couple of
yeah,
albums.
I know a rather well-known, um, record label. Well, a record label that we know relatively well, who I think almost everything they release is a tax write-off because they make so much money from their other random stuff. But anyway, we'll probably get into trouble for me talking about that, so I won't. Anyway,
You
but yeah,
so
it seems like there's a lot of ructions, a lot of worried people in the fucking industry at the moment, worrying about poor ticket sales and stuff because obviously, um, I mean, agents and people trying to bring bands over can't calculate really anything without any ticket
no.
sales. I mean, you can't pay for flights for any bands or anything like this, you know?
It's probably like that. The whole thing about Anthrax cancelling their tour, and same as everyone said that, you know, the costs had trebled. But it goes to show that even a band like that, like, you know, pull 3,000 people to a lot of their gigs these days. The entire fee must go into getting the show on the road. So
Well,
they're basically relying on the merch to sell, like, or to make profit. So it's like if you're going to increase the cost of putting the show on by such a massive extent, then it's going to end up going out of, it's going to cost more than your fee, really, isn't it? You know.
I mean, it depends. I mean, I don't think Anthrax headlining on their own with another support band is pulling 3,000 people in Germany. I think you're probably talking more like a Markthalle or 750 to 1,250, 1,350. But
I
in
think a bit like they sold out their UK tour, and like obviously they have a better following maybe in the UK, but like they've never headlined Brixton Academy before. It's 5,000, you know, so that's like, I think they've definitely moved up a little tiny notch, you
yeah,
know.
oh no, for sure. I just can't see them. Like I couldn't see them selling out 3,000 venues. Not in this energy crisis fucking situation. I mean, it could also be that the pre-sales were just awful, as they are
Yeah,
for almost everything, and they just use this as an excuse and went, "No, there's other
totally.
stuff happening."
Or like, you know, that we were talking to Jarvis, our mate from Night Demon, and he was saying that this is a couple of months ago. We're talking about, you know, the downturn, and said that Kiss had played a show in Hamburg or something and sold 95 t-shirts or something like that.
Mm. Well, I mean,
So like that's the thing. Like if you're hearing news like that and you're relying on merch to do a good turn, if no one's got any money, then obviously you're not going to sell as much merch, you know.
no, I mean, we even saw this at the Heavy Hamburg thing last weekend. I mean, Primordial, Night Demon, Satan, Portrait, the others, Psycho Punch, and more bands. And I mean, they were, I'm not sure that they got 400 ticket sales in the end. I mean, it was good. It was good vibe in the end, but it certainly that gig 4 years ago should have had 700, 800. 900 people. But I mean, like, it seems that almost everything is, in certain areas, is doing half, or it's doing 30-40% of what it did before. And a lot of people are also, I think that, the pandemic and lockdown stuff just changed people's socialization views, and that they if you don't buy a ticket, it means you don't have to commit. And then you can just go, well, I'll just stay on the couch and drink wine and not be bothered with all the stuff we just mentioned 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, but we're also, coming from a generation of people where the most expensive part of your evening out was going to be the ticket, you know? Even
No.
10 years ago, like that was it. Like, spending 20 quid on a ticket to go and see Creator. Like, if Creator came back now, tickets would most certainly be around €40, and you'd probably spend €60 on drink and, like, €30 on transport or whatever. So,
But that's also because they're, I mean, for an awful lot of bands, the crowd has aged with them. And so
yeah,
now the crowd is looking to go on the fucking lush when they get the night out. They also want the fucking hotel. They've got babysitters.
yeah.
They've got all these other middle-aged and older, young kid costs that stop them. When you're 20, maybe you're sculling cans around the back of the venue. You've bought your six-pack. You've smuggled in your bit of
Yeah.
fucking whatever, and you're not spending. You're not horsing. I mean, you've been to those gigs yourself, and it fucking annoys the fuck out of me. I mean, Black Sabbath, for example, played for 75 minutes, which included a bass solo and a small interval to let Ozzy sing. And there were fucking people who I think maybe only saw two songs because they were so busy queuing for pints, horsing them into them with like the 12 pint thing, who were just like back to the bar. And you're like, I get it. You've only been let out of the Midlands for like 3 nights a fucking year, but it just seemed, what it's like. The older people want to go on the fucking batter, and so
I was doing,
they need
I was
200
doing
quid in the
Tekken
pocket.
for,
Like, hmm?
I was doing Tekken for Acid Rain there last 2 years ago or whatever, and they were saying that because like their fans are exclusively Clutch guy, they're
Yeah,
all exactly that 48-year-old guy. They all have insane amounts of disposable income, so they
yeah,
were wanting to come up and spend 300 quid on the merch stand.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of both things at the same time.
yeah. But then I don't know, like maybe Clutch guy now is he thinking I'll not drive from fucking Navan down to go and see Zentrix, or is he saying, I saw them last time, I'm not going to bother, or is the
I
flame
mean,
still
I
strong?
I think that Ireland is oddly insulated from the German form of pragmatism. Maybe it's because we even though our cost of living is going up, people keep complaining about it. Every gig, I mean, whether it was Obscura or Evergrey, both pulled over 200 people in Dublin. Bands who I would imagine that's one of the highest shows on their whole European tour. I mean, German pragmatism, maybe it's because they're all connected to Gazprom and Mama Merkel sold them out 10 or 15
Mm.
years ago, and, Brother Putin can switch them off when we get most of our gas and oil from other
But
places.
here, now, would you not say this though, man? Is it not a situation where like places like London and Dublin are the exception because
Oh, yeah.
costs so much money to live there that
Yeah.
by the very fact that you're living there means you must have disposable income.
Um, but then again, you could say it about Paris or Berlin or something. I think it's expensive to live in most big cities in Europe. I think it's more, I think there's something cultural there in that, at least from what I see down here, people are less frugal, less prudent with their money they're willing to spend on a gig. Even though I know, but the problems I'm talking about are still there. They still exist. But I just see them much more amplified on the mainland, especially in Germany.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what fucking Italy and Spain are like now. I mean, they always had hardly any pre-sales anyway. That was just
I think the
just a
places like
cultural
that,
thing. Hmm?
it's also that kind of South American vibe where no one's actually really believes that the gig is happening until they see that a bunch of their mates have bought tickets.
I think
Um,
it's also they just know it's not going to sell out, so why would you buy a ticket in advance? It's just I think it's a cultural thing about being organized, being efficient, and being prepared.
yeah.
The flip side of that for Germans is frugality, and that was maybe something Ireland pre-Celtic Tiger had a bit more in abundance, which I still think we haven't quite embraced because, as you say, Clutch Guy, maybe he has more disposable income than German Clutch Guy. I don't know. He bought
Yeah,
less. He bought
probably. And like
less shorts
again, the
this
thing
winter
with
or
the
something.
the thing with the Europeans is that like the bill that you were talking about heavy Hamburg there is such an amazing bill. Like if that was happening in Dublin or London or whatever, people would be ecstatic.
Yeah.
But the problem is that in Germany, there's probably been bills like at fucking, Rock Hard Festival or wherever, where maybe four of those bands have been on the same day, you know?
Yeah.
So there's always the idea that they can say, well, I've seen Satan and Night Demon twice before, and I know they'll be playing some festival that I'll be at next year. Whereas like people over here and the UK and stuff, they don't have that. You don't have the same availability of bands who are going to be at festivals no matter what.
It's true. It's true. But also still people are showing up for, I mean, like Vector is playing here in what, like 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that the Dublin show will probably have more people at it than every show in Germany and Austria. I'd say you could probably make a very good calculated guess at that. And why that is, I don't know. I think it's a combination of things, but there's a certain level of lack of, as I said, Gazprom fueled frugality or something like that. I
It's
don't know.
also, I suppose, like Vector are one of those bands. We saw them last time they played was in 2016. So, like,
Oh
that
yeah,
is like six or whatever years ago.
6. You're right.
So, I guess if you're a fan, you might risk it for a biscuit. Like, so moving on to Maiden again, but
Oh yeah,
so like I saw them there in Belfast in July, and tickets were 58 quid. I saw them in
58
Belfast.
quid. That's fucking
Saw them in
cheap.
Belfast a couple of years before that, and they were like 49 quid. And even whenever I saw them in fucking Oakland Amphitheater or whatever, just before COVID, when it was at 2019, it was around the same price. But the tour that they're doing next year, 100 quid a ticket. So that's mad. Like Maiden for me have always seemed to be one of those bands, the last holdouts on the let's not charge $100 a ticket. But yeah, the tour next year is going to be 100 quid.
So that means if it's down here, it's going to be 130, 128, 132.
Well, I think it's yo-yo. So, well, sure, man, those days are over. Like, uh, €90 is going to be 80
Oh, yeah.
quid. The difference is not what it was anymore. So
No, but shows are usually more expensive down here though.
yeah,
But
and
no,
like I do feel a bit. It's weird one with Maiden because there was so much time where chances in playing any old material were few and far between, and it seems in the last 5 or 6 years we've just had tour after tour of.
they go back and forth, don't they? You get a new album and Hallowed Be Thy Name and Run to the Hills tour, and then you get a mixed tour or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know. I was unlucky enough to see, I think, the worst possible tour. Not only did you get dog shit, Funeral for a Friend and Support, um, it was all of Dance of Death, and then a 4-song encore, which was the exact 4 songs you could imagine that they played: Fear the Dark, Hallowed Be the Name, Run to the Hills, and Iron Maiden, and that was it. Um, but I was thinking
I
about
don't
this.
know.
We were arguing about this the other day. I said to the lads from Portrait or something, we were talking about it, and I said, discuss. Iron Maiden and Judas Priest have done nothing for heavy metal in almost 30 years, as in never brought out a new young heavy metal band who remotely were up and coming in purely heavy metal terms. It was always
Yeah.
either the old behemoths here and now, here and there, or joke shit or Kerrang shit, but they never ever brought out, let's say, the open rising equivalent of a Night Demon or an
Well,
Enforcer or
like right,
ever.
yeah. Priests are slightly different because frequently when priests do American tours, it has to be Uriah Heep and Priest or Queensryche and Priest, or like they need to have another somewhat known name
Oh
to
yeah, that's
get
what I mean. Yeah, yeah.
6,000
Well,
people
I
there,
mean,
right?
the last time I saw them in America, it was fucking Steel Panther. So
Yeah,
um, Judas Priest doesn't bring Uriah Heep on tour, do they?
yeah.
I could see
They did a
Queensryche.
they did a US tour from there a couple of years ago, and
Really?
bands of that ilk. So I think that it's one of those things that, like as I said, they're playing those like ice hockey 6 or 7 thousand seater places, and they need to have another band
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that
no, I
they don't
understand.
get to
I
those
understand that. We're just arguing about it, and I just said the last time Maiden did it was trying to bring out Madame Bride, maybe in '96.
maybe yeah the
But
X
since
Factor.
then, since then they have successfully had, I think, the worst lineups, apart from the odd Motorhead or the odd Megadeth. But like
But come on, like the thing is, like it's nepotism. Obviously, is like fucking the word of the day, isn't it? Like they're bringing out their kids' bands or people associated with them, like that. I would not be surprised if there were some of the awful bands that brought out Rod Smallwood was managing.
oh yeah,
But
no,
a
I'm
lot
not.
of the
I mean,
stuff
I'm
out
not.
there,
I know the reasons why. I just said it because it offends Iron Maiden
oh,
fans, which I
like
felt
it's
like I was
fucking
in the
shit.
mood to do.
But now, if Rod Smallwood is managing the band, and bands like Shinedown are probably paying 150,000 quid to do the tour, So if you were in that situation and some like well-known band like Shinedown, their management said we want to give you 150,000 to do the tour, because when Maiden did the Kiss tour in 1980, it was 30 grand, and what is 30 $1980,000? What
No,
is that now?
no, I just think it's an interesting thing, and also it offends Iron Maiden fans, which I think I was just in the humor to try and offend somebody. They're not just going. When is the last time they went? You know what? We will help. We'll help
They don't
heavy
give a
metal
fuck,
out.
man. Like it's the same as AC/DC fans or even Guns N' Roses fans. They're not interested in who is supporting them, And
No,
like
no.
I'm sure.
No. I mean, the only way it would have made sense was I remember Judas Priest, Annihilator, and Pantera, '91. A bit like that, up and coming bands snapping at their heels. We'll try it out. It
Yep.
seems to be something that just stopped in around '93, '94. The old bands went, nah, we're not going to bother doing this. Maybe '98, maybe '97.
Well, there's probably a lot of bands like Megadeth and stuff who just got bad taste in their mouth. Bring Alice in Chains out supporting them. Alice in Chains end up becoming as big as them a year or two later. Same with Pantera. Bringing them out, and by all accounts, a lot of people said that they blew them away the whole tour. So I think James Hetfield said that once when I was reading an interview with Gary Holt, and he was saying they did a show with Metallica in 1985 or something, and Hetfield said that's the last time you are ever going to be supporting us, because they don't want to have some other band there who's going to even blow them away. It is hard, like you guys would be a perfect example of someone who should be able to go out and like support someone like Deep Purple or Maiden or like an older, more legacy band where half the audience are going to be clutch guys or young people, but there's probably older 50s and 60-year-olds who they were in their 30s in the 90s, and they might be interested in that kind of music.
I think that theoretically you're probably right, but I think that the ability for the support bands to make any impression on the sort of aging, more partisan, um, audience who just want to be at the bar and then go and see their favorite band and be lamped, and they don't like, who was it who supported Soundgarden when they played a Graveyard? No one gave a shit. No one gave a shit, and they should give a shit. Graveyard is a great band, and
they were really good that night. And that's exactly Soundgarden fans should have been digging that. Same as when AC/DC had the Answer supporting them in Dublin, and like people were talking around me louder than the band were playing because they'd been limited so much on the PA that you could see these guys in the background looking like free, and everyone was just standing talking amongst themselves.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think Graveyard is a way better band than the Answer for the circumstance. But then again, if they've been given the full PA, does your average AC/DC fan know that? I don't know. I'm just being a bit of a.
Not even that. It's just more that like you're talking about classic rock bands, like the Answer or Graveyard. That should appeal to the people who are going to the gig.
Graveyard. I mean, Graveyard were fucking big at this time as well, big enough. You know what I mean? But I think unless I think a Soundgarden crowd would care about Stone Temple Pilots or fuck all else. You know what I mean? They want to see something else old, or Mad Season or something. They don't give a shit about anything new. And the same with AC/DC. Airborne could maybe grab an AC/DC crowd by the balls, but I think even AC/DC's management might kibosh that.
Like it's too much. Like the comparison is way too much. Like speaking about Maiden in the UK tour for Virtual 11, Helloween with a support band.
Yeah.
And that was around the time they did Master of the Rings or whatever, and had a bit more of a get up and go about them.
Yeah.
And I think that was a bit of a mistake because like they were like, here's like a kind of better version of Maiden supporting Maiden, a band who owe their entire existence to Iron Maiden supporting Iron Maiden. I don't know. That's probably not the right mix. Like I said, we did a tour Irish tour with Anthrax, you know, and it wasn't great for us because people would be like, why would we want to see a version of Anthrax from Newry when real Anthrax were on
Yeah.
afterwards? Like, you know,
Yeah, I do wonder, like, maybe the era of being able to impress the fans of a bigger band is gone because the fans are aging with the band, and an influx of new, young, and excited people who might be excited by said band don't exist for, like, let's say Wasp. I remember that I've seen Wasp however many times in Dublin with X other buy-on support band who have just sunk without trace as soon as the tour is over, because their fans are Wasp's fans are old and they just don't care. If it was Armored Saint or Anvil or another old band from that period, they don't. It's like they're just like, look, I have enough in my record collection. I don't need whoever this is, X and new kind of band, unless they're absolutely exceptional. And there's a tiny percentage they can grab some of that audience, but most of the time, I think, unfortunately, heavy metal because it's or elements of old school heavy metal because it is quite an anachronism. Um, I don't think it works anymore. The old model from the
I think
80s.
the smaller the profile. So, like, say if Anvil had Asmavel supporting them, I
Yeah,
think that Asmavel could get a load of great fans out of that sort of deal. Or
maybe.
similarly, maybe if like Asmavel were supporting a not like a bigger new Wobble style band like Saxon, that
Yeah,
might go well for them, right?
that's true. Yeah.
But it is hard to say, like, because on one side we're saying there's these Acid Rain fan type people who want to spend all the money on the merch stand, but would they want to buy t-shirts from the support band? I don't know, maybe or maybe
If,
not.
if, if
You
it
know,
was other crap like Low More Death or something, they'd probably be made up. Pick something
metal
else
stuff.
equally shit from the era, and they'd probably be like, this is cool. But if you gave them, um, I don't know, like I remember seeing Airborne and Enforcer were with them, and the people in Ireland were giving them the finger, telling them to fuck off and throwing things at them, just because they were
Mm.
pretty dudes with spandex. But the first band, Spiders, from something or other, just gone completely. Classic rock, barroom boogie. They were like, we like
It's
you guys
weird, isn't it?
because
Like how many like this is like a restaurant opening and getting a loan from 90 grand from the bank and then closing 6 weeks later. Like, and it's that those kind of insanely short careers. These
yeah,
and it's been going on since I remember seeing Evanescence. Oh no, not Evanescence. What the heck were they called with a woman singer supporting Megadeth in the SFX, and people were throwing like 2p coins at them and stuff like that.
oh, tourist.
Defenestration.
Oh right, I saw Tourist Satana once in Dynamo in '97, maybe '96, and they were on they were on one other stage and they were bumped up because Deicide were stuck in traffic, so they faced 12 down 14,000 Deicide fans when Deicide were big, 96,
Mm.
97, and people were pissing in the mud, scooping it up into cups, and it was just raining down mud and piss and stones on them. I think they lasted about a song and a half. I mean, it was amazing to watch. It was fucking hilarious that you think you could stare down 15,000 angry death metal
That
fans.
sort of thing has happened a lot. Like, I remember whenever Reading Festival was more of a like everything festival, Slipknot were playing at it, and Daphne and Celeste, the pop band, were on at their spot. Basically, I think Slipknot were late or some similar
Yeah,
kind of story where they had to go on later. So there was a whole bunch of people standing there throwing crap at them, and
yeah. It was the
you
same
have to
with
sort of take the rough with the smooth. Like, I
yeah,
remember, like, you probably had the same thing. Like, we're going and supporting bigger bands, and you're standing when we like played with Machine Head. You're like, oh, I can hear the crowd are chanting. Like, they're not shouting Gamma Bomb, they're shouting Machine Head. Like, so you're walking out on
yeah.
stage while they're shouting Machine Head. Like, and you're like, okay, well, let's just do this for half an hour and see how we get on.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think it happened to Slipknot after Morbid Angel at the very first Hellfest as well. They got fucking stoned. Hang on one second. Oh
Discuss.
yeah,
Indeed.
yeah. What was the question again?
We're talking about like young heavy metal bands from Europe and like being able to make a pretty good impression on the festival scene, or getting a good name in the underground. And how do you transfer that into getting to break into the UK or Ireland or America, or trying to get your audience out there, you know.
I don't know. I mean, the amount of work that it takes for that break. I mean, I'm not sure if it's worth it anymore. The best thing you can do is probably just play Damnation Festival, play Cosmic Void, play Bloodstock, play
Mm.
whatever. Do you really want to play in Wrexham to 28 people? And
Oh
I,
yeah, like I think Insanity Alert played at a Damnation Festival, and it's probably had a pretty decent show there, you know. And
yeah,
like I think it's better for European bands to be able to break into the UK by doing stuff like that instead of having to break into the UK. Like even back in the 80s and stuff, man, there was a lot of bands out there like Tankard and stuff who were coming over and doing 3 or 4 shows in the UK, or Sodom when they did Persecution
I just,
Mania. There was like
I also just
50
think,
people at the London show. Look, you know.
I also think just a lot of bands just can't be bothered, especially now with Brexit and the carnet costs that are involved. I mean, if I could redo our tour we did in April, we would have cut the 2 days in the UK off and just gone to Poland.
Yeah.
The carnet, which people might not know what that is, it's a list of your equipment, which used to be something that, as I understood, the backline company would do for free. Now they want €1,300 for this list. Again, you just are constantly price gouged by everybody. And you know, we were one London show that was okay, the other one which was fucked up, and that, you know, we would have just been better going to Warsaw and
Yeah.
going to Katowice, playing to 400, 500 people in
It's a
Poland.
hard one, isn't it? Like we did a gig in London there the other week, and it was grand, and we had a good time, and it was in, you know, Black Heart and stuff like that. So it's a super tiny room anyway. But you kind of like we played in London in July at Boston Music Rooms, and I don't really know if it's a good idea really doing things like that twice a year. Like if you want to try and like have good London gigs, I think the
Yeah,
secret is don't do one every year, never
yeah.
mind twice
I
a year,
mean,
you know.
I would say we've overplayed London as well. I mean, there was a time when we were almost doing 700, 800 people, and you can see that that's come down to about 450. We played there too often for, you know, infrequent albums, and whereas in Poland, place we played far less. The last few gigs have been 400, 500 people. So, and also just, you know, what England is synonymous with, you know, worse backstage food, treated generally poorly compared
Mm.
to many other countries. I mean, we with Primordial, I stopped being interested in be playing Bradford and whatever. I was just like, can we just be in Porto or Lisbon
Yeah,
or
because that's the thing, isn't it? Like,
somewhere beautiful where
even
the sun
if the gig at
shines?
Even if the Porto gig doesn't go fantastically, you're still hanging about, having a nice time in Portugal.
Yeah,
Where there is a bit of a certainty where you're like, we're playing Nottingham again tonight, and you know, do we want to end up in a situation where it keeps getting better, and then we'll have to come back to Nottingham every year? You'd probably rather be like, let's do that in, you know, Berlin, and then we can have a good following there instead of having a good following somewhere you don't want to have to
yeah.
tour all the time, you know.
I mean, there's something more, there's something a bit sort of slightly deeper, more profound, I think, at least personally, and that's sort of maybe being a few further years further ahead, is that having been sort of vomited out the other side of the pandemic lockdowns experience, all of us closer to or at 50, you're very conscious of the fact like, oh yeah, this is the last few chapters of this. There's only a finite number of times more that this happens. So just enjoy the gigs for what they are. I talked with our booking agency and I went, there's no plan anymore. There's not a plan for 2025 because some of us will be, you know, I mean, I'm 47s, but some of us in 3, 4, 5 years will be 55. We could be
You know, I think it works with your music better than most. You know,
sure. I know, but
watching a video of John Connolly from Nuclear Assault and at the gig in London, it's just saying, man, this is very difficult now. You know, now that he's a guy who's in his 60s
yeah,
and like you know, like a kind of small overweightish guy. Like he's
yeah,
not a 20-year-old dude anymore. So
yeah.
it's
So,
way
so what I'm,
harder to play fast music.
so what I'm trying to say with that is that the conversations we're having about what you need to do to break into this, that, and the other, I've sort of kind of thought to myself, it doesn't fucking matter anymore. I just said we want to play anywhere, anywhere interesting. In terms of a career, 80% of our career is over. So the plan it is because we don't. I mean, are we going to be? Am I going to be doing this on 57? I don't know. But the point is,
would imagine that you will still be doing this when you're 70 because lots of the music goes down.
Yeah, but I don't personally. I don't think so. But the point is, when people try and tell me this is the plan, I go, the plan is in the past. The plan was what we should have done 20 years ago. We're in the last bit now. I don't really care. It's just like just have good shows, interesting places. I'm not interested in playing on a Tuesday in front of 32 people in Southend. I'm too old. It's just like, hey, let's go to Canada next month, play Messa de Mort or whatever, or a good tour, a big tour, breaking it, as we say, in different places. So it's just not going to happen. Like
Yeah. I
this
think
stuff
it's
is
like a lot of
in
bands
the
are having
past.
such a very difficult time. Like Space Chaser had to cancel their UK and Irish gigs because they couldn't get the visas sorted out. Venom Inc. rather had to cancel their. Like it was it them and Malevolent Creation or something? Like it was a
Yeah, yeah.
decent, but
Suffocation,
they had
maybe.
to, yeah, they had to cancel that
But
because
this is also,
couldn't get the either.
we have to kind of know that a lot of the reasons that have been given for cancellations lately are not the reasons. The real reasons are no one bought any tickets and no one cares.
Yeah.
I think that there's a huge feeling of inertia throughout society, and without being super gloomy about it, um, those kind of break it conversations, um, just keep it for Bloodstock Festival. Play a one killer gig there. That'll do your whole tour of 10 days. You don't, if you want to, and you're in the country anyway, but you're not going to break it by busting your balls to get to Edinburgh to play in front of 28 people in Bannerman's or whatever. I mean, not to sound like a miserable old cunt for somebody who's 23. I mean, by all means, do it. It's it's character building, but I'm not sure there's a break it conversation once you're over 35 years old. I don't think it works anymore because, and especially if you're even older than that, because your crowd is old as you're old. And one thing I've been very understood very clearly is that coming out of the pandemic and being that bit older is like, oh, we're not young anymore and we don't appeal to younger people. We don't have a young crowd. The days of us breaking through to tuk 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 are whatever that is, that younger age is because you're too far from the shore now. So it kind of feels like,
Do you look into all that kind of stuff? As in, do you look into the demographic of what age? Because they're presuming that, like, yeah, like Primordial's fan base is probably a bit older than Dread Sovereigns, is it? Like, or would you say it's similar?
um, I'm not sure Dress really has a fan base. I mean, they're mainly Primordial fans, or I mean, this may sound meant. The first thing I do whenever I come on stage is not only do I look at every single fucking person if I can in the crowd, I make very quick mental arithmetic of left to right, and I calculate mathematically how many people I think are there. And I look at everyone, I gauge their age, I'm really, really interested in all of those kind of anthropological, if that's the right word, observations of a crowd, split them by gender, blah, blah, blah. And then I think about that quite a lot. And so I'm happy that Promoted is not 45 to 60-year-old fans. We actually have a lot of people who are in their 20s. It's a very split male, female gender. Like it's not like when you go and see a brutal death metal band, it's 95-5. It's 50-50, 60, 55-45. So I'm perfectly aware of all these things, but it's been very profound having come back after pandemic to realize like, okay, we're in the last 5 to 10 years of this. There's no plan. I said to Jorg, there's no plan. We're not going to do where we're not playing shows here because we won't get them in the next year. Do them all now. We might be dead soon. So I don't have, I've become,
You might not be dead soon. Also, look, like
yeah,
I
but
know that you're probably having one of the longer breaks between albums, but like I don't know. I suppose
that's
it's
because of
split.
the pandemic. No,
Would you say though, like, is that because of the pandemic, or is it because everyone else is thinking about other stuff in their life at the minute? We've been trying to record the vocals for an album for 3 months. It's
well,
when Philly was moving into a different house and stuff, and it's like literally we're getting half a song done, the vocals, a month.
well, I'm quite glad we did nothing because I wouldn't want to have wasted a record to release it during the pandemic. Um, if
Yeah, but
promoted,
like, are you wasting it because you can't tour it, or are you
yeah,
wasting like we got our listenership on Spotify from 20,000 to 125,000.
yeah.
You know,
I mean, what I'm talking about is it's wasted in terms of what it means for me. And I know that sounds selfish, but if
Because
you're,
you want it to be an experience and like something
yeah,
that you're going to remember for your days, where you're like, this was the tour and this was
yeah,
the experience, you know.
here's the time we spent in Mexico. Here's the time we spent it, because that's what it really means. I'm
Well,
okay.
that's what it means to you as an individual. Like, whereas,
Yeah,
like to me, like so, if I think about like Game Over, I don't think about the Game Over tour. I think about the album Game Over. So I think like the album is the thing that lasts that people are going to remember, whereas the tour and the experiences are more of a personal thing, you know.
yeah, but that's really, to be honest, that's what I'm interested in more. Also,
Yeah.
I was far too angry to be able to make a coherent record. So I would have just wasted a whole load of energy on it, and I think that it would have come out. I would have been even more furious and angry because we weren't able to do anything, and it would have been completely negative experience for me to release a record in
Did
lockdown
you not
because
think that Dread Sovereign got a bit of a bump actually from being in that like sort of pandemic-y?
no, it just pissed me off because it was a fucking brilliant record that was wasted on the pandemic because we couldn't go out and play it. I'm not like me personally. I just have no interest in just watching numbers go up and down on the screen. It's like, oh, Dread Seven went from 400 listeners to 1,500 and then back down to whatever it is. I mean, people like the record a lot. What we've played in Europe, 5, 6 shows for it. I didn't get to hang out with the lads. I didn't get to do, you know,
But would that sour your idea of going and making another one? Because I presume that there are several labels, like Metal Blade included,
yeah,
who would be very happy for you to do
uh,
another record. But it's
yeah. I
like,
mean, I kind of won't do one out of spite. There'll be another new thing, but I won't waste that much energy on a record until I've played the last one to the point where I feel um, like it sounds selfish, but until I feel like I've done what I wanted to do,
it's a whole,
because
Doyle, the guy who plays guitar for the Misfits,
well, it's apparently,
well,
allegedly,
that lad. Um, he's been working on an album for X years, and
yeah,
he said publicly, he's like, I'm not going to start recording this record or do anything until the last one recoups. Like, I don't want to end up in a
yeah,
situation where I'm just having to bring out a record and then because it's 2 years later, bring out another one. I want the last one to be, you know.
yeah. I mean, I don't want people to think I'm just sounding like a selfish dickhead with it, but there has to be something in it for me. And what that something is was certainly during pandemic and lockdown was not being to make me even more angry at the situation. Because I didn't need that. So for me, I just locked Primordial on a shelf, went bollocks to it all. Let's come back to it only when we were able to do what we want to do. And I'm glad that we had nothing to release in that time. Okay, so if we did, we saw our monthly listeners hemorrhage again from 125 to 45, but what, what are you going to do?
But like,
So,
what I
but
was going to say is, so I think that because you are a bit more of a legacy band, and
hmm,
it's mad thinking about this, like people referring to bands from the 90s as classic rock bands, and
yeah,
like I think you're sort of in that sort of vein now. You need a custodian, you need some guy who's going to sit there and remaster tapes and put
yeah,
put together all the stuff that's in the archive so that instead of it being like one album, like you want to be like Maiden where you can make an album every 5 or 6 years and
yeah,
in between uh keep things going over with old stuff
yeah. Well, I
that
mean,
you're happy to release.
we can still get booked and we can still do things. And so, I mean, it's not like, like it doesn't feel like as if it's over the hill in terms of people being interested in the band. I mean, it just ticks itself over. But like I said, I think there has to be something in it for you as a musician. And for me, whether that's the first time you visit Russia or Australia or Brazil or Mexico, I'm more focused on the finite number of times you spin around the ball of dirt and how that end is becoming even more, it's becoming closer. So you need to
Yep.
make the best album you can, not rush it out. And for 5 years for people who like Primordial, I think is fine because
And you have that like kind of same as ourselves. You have the luxury of having a decent discography, so that there's a lot of people
yeah,
who, whenever they get into your band, they find that you actually have eight albums or
yeah,
whatever
yeah,
to go and listen to, and like none of them are a Risk style album or some sort of fucking Cold Lake. So
yeah.
I think that there is something to be said for that. Like, you don't need to be in a situation where you pump them out super
Yeah,
quickly.
it's a I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a sort of, for me, it was a kind of comprehension of what you are, what being a musician means, about being creative. And certainly for me, being creative only, for example, we weren't able to rehearse because of restrictions and rules here. And we would have been, I mean, what were we going to do? Start rehearsing online, record ourselves. And for me, that's all the reasons why I started playing in a band, to be in a room with people, whether it was rehearsing or gigs, taken away from it. And it would be, for me, placing an anti-human perspective on the whole process, creative process, which for me was part of sharing that with other people, or it was a human process. So I would have, if it was going to continue, for example, lockdown, I think I probably would never make another metal record. I just would have said no. I'll make something electronic or do something in my room or whatever, but heavy metal, to me at least, it's just not meant for this. And whether that would have disappointed Primordial fans, there would still be 9
Yeah, but
albums that
the
they could
thing is,
listen
like,
to.
it's probably worth noting, listeners, that your situation is actually quite different than everyone else in the band. Because you have a slightly more nomadic lifestyle, and
Yeah.
you make 100% of your living from music and the arts.
But it's not, but Joe, it's not just about the living. I think what it is then we all agreed, like we all in the, it wasn't like I was the person on the other side of it. We all agreed, like, no, this isn't the right environment for us being us. Let's just leave it alone for a year and a half. Cope with what you have to cope with. Do your family, do your whatever, and we'll return
Yeah,
to this on our own terms. We won't be forced into.
but that's a
Uh,
very healthy way of doing it, like, because,
it,
like,
it was a healthy
whenever you
way.
read about bands like the Police or whatever, like, or whatever, when bands are put in difficult situations, a lot of the time they'll just say, no, fuck it. Like, at least you could say, let's just go and do our own thing for a year or two
Yeah,
here, and we'll see
well,
where
we
the
just
land
kind of.
lies.
Well, I think what it was is that we weren't going to change the way we were as a band, which was it's still got to be 5 of us in a rehearsal room arguing, talking to each other, or on a plane, or in a backstage, or on a stage. That's what Primordial is and was, and it wasn't going to be changed by the pandemic. And if it was, and there wasn't a compromise to be made, the compromise would have ultimately been, we leave this lie until the world changes to come back to the place where we were. And maybe that sounds like people going, oh, you're maybe you're doing people who love the band out of a record to hear. To me, it was like, well, you have 9 albums. We have 9 albums. If this is the exit, then this is the exit. And now, thankfully, it turned out not to be so. Although, you did lose 2.5 years of your fucking life or whatever, and it's still not as it was. I don't think it ever will be. But at the same time, it did come back. So to me, people go, oh, it's 4.5 years since your last album. I just go, no, it's 2.
Yeah.
For me, to me, those years are lost, and so I just don't count them in terms of, all it counted is more to my own personal age. And I go, I'm older now, and I said this to like I said, the booking agent said, there's no plan anymore, really. The plan is for us to take as much out of this as possible, make the greatest album we can for the next one. We have plans, we have ideas, but there's no what we're going to do in 2025, because it might not exist in 2025. So yeah, let's do it all fucking now. Let's try and get to whatever within reason. Because, and I don't care if it saturates the market, but there's not going to be, oh, you
Well,
can't. You know
I
what I
think
mean?
that,
Like,
like,
what I mean by
being
that
able to
is,
go and
what I mean by that is,
going and doing it in Europe is very different than everywhere else, because typically with, like, your band and, like, my band and a lot of sort of, like medium or small heavy metal bands, you can do it as weekend warriors where you're going out and
yeah,
playing
yeah,
festivals and stuff like that, and there isn't a necessity to go and try and do the 30 shows. Whereas, like, the problem with going to anywhere else, like if you want to go to North America, or
yeah,
like I suppose somewhere like Canada or like South America, you could spend a week doing, or Australia, you could
yeah.
spend a week touring
I
over
mean,
there. But
I'm kind of like, what I mean by that, what I was trying to say is, like, we're talking about, hey, this Ren thing, two show stand next month, or whatever. I said, maybe we can do this again. And I said,
yeah,
and then somebody said to me, yeah, there's reasons why. And I said, look, I don't really want to hear the reasons why it can't work. Like, we're in the
you
last.
should just say to Jorg, book two nights in a club in
Yeah, yeah.
Barcelona.
No, but my
Like a
my
club that you can hold like 400 people in, and like if you can get like 300 people a night, I think.
Sure.
Killer.
No, what I'm trying to point out is something more blunt, which is just like, we're too late in the day for, you can't do this because it doesn't fit into the plan of the structure. My answer to that is, well, it might not exist in 6 years anyway. So when because the pandemic showed us clearly what life is like without a band or being creative or being musicians, um, to prepare the ground for that, let's fucking, you're going to have to, I don't know what you're going to soften the ground up with an awful lot of, artillery or whatever.
Yeah. Well, like, here's the thing, man.
That
You
didn't
can't
work.
put
That didn't work as an analogy at all.
but you can't put 100% of your faith in enjoying the rest of your life into the idea that the band is going to do gigs all the time.
No.
Like,
What I'm actually saying is
if
the opposite.
if it's not a pandemic, it'll be some other life issue,
Yeah,
and
death.
we're getting
It'll be death.
older, and people will end up getting sick and stuff.
Yeah,
And
but Joe, what I just said was actually exactly what you just said. Is in, let's get, is in, there's no plan, long-term plan anymore. It can only be a short-term plan because we're in the short term. Being that
yeah,
bit older, it's like if you only have 5 years left of the band, there's no plan for 6 or 7 or 8 years. Let's fucking do it now. And
yeah,
so
and don't go back and play Whitby Gothic Weekend or whatever the other.
I do that in a heartbeat. I want to do
Or
that.
well, not that specifically, but something else that is of no.
Well, what are you going to do with?
I was going to say that is the thing about whenever you're younger in a band, you end up going and playing places that if you were older now, if you could look back, you'd say, let's not do that. That was fucking stupid. We played a gig in Middlesbrough and there was nobody there, and it was awful. And it was one of,
yeah,
Middlesbrough.
I think the thing is, like, just to try and sort of, I mean, it's a complicated minefield to sort of cross all these kind of different things, but I do think there is that sort of realization of, oh yeah, you're in the last, maybe not the last chapter, but the last couple of chapters, and so prepare accordingly. Don't be undignified and let it all hang out, but try and prepare accordingly.
You need to fucking start trying to tick the box more. Make the Primordial Unplugged album with loads of candles around you. Get a keyboard player in and make a Deep Purple-y type album, etc. You should probably leave and they could get like a Dio type guy in for a couple of records, and then come back.
I was thinking of saying to them all that they have to go to a health camp, a fitness camp, or else I'm going to leave, and we all should do a reality TV show about like a month in a boot camp or something like that, or Coffin Ship of Love. What about that?
Nice.
Yeah.
And that would be it. And it could be set in a real life coffin ship where you have to spend 3 weeks crossing the Atlantic with people who have the plague or whatever.
Well, I mean, that's a sort of pandemic. That's a lockdown show. You'd watch that.
Yeah, it'd be pretty good.
Set off Spike Island or something like that,
So, like, isn't it weird? It's Halloween, right?
Yeah.
I would have thought that at Helloween would do a big, massive show in Germany, or that it would be like a thing, with the pumpkins and all that kind of stupidity. Like,
well, they're touring South America right now because I was stupid enough to watch footage of some show in Argentina or something last week.
yeah,
my mind is baffled and boggled by the video sort of show that they have going on in the background, which looks like it was made in 1992 on, Windows 5 or something.
I remember seeing Guns N' Roses and thinking the same thing, looking at their video show and being like, they clearly spent like $100 grand on this in 1998, and they're like, we need to get our money's worth out of this. Like, we're not going to go and get a new video show. Like,
yeah, but that's what Halloween looked like. It was still.
Helloween have that kind of thing, like the Scorpions as well, where they look like U2 on stage. They're always wearing like wraparound sunglasses and like fucking weird.
There's one guy who has a sort of weird kind of sideways mohawk. Who's he? Where did he come from?
And he plays like one of those futuristic, like Paul Stanley guitars as well. Like, he's just like a dude. He's like the third guitar guy who's just got in by default. Like, he had his hands on the monster truck and was like, That's it. I'm in. You know, like not Gilby Clark. What's the guy in Guns N' Roses?
Dizzy Gillespie.
Dizzy Reed. He's
Dizzy
been there
Reed.
since he's been there since like 1990. Like just
Dizzy
by
Reed.
or like Darren Wharton in Thin Lizzy. You just need to keep your head down, man. Like don't say anything to upset the cart, and all of a sudden you've been in the band for 35 years or however long Darren Wharton's been in Thin Lizzy now. Like,
Well, he went on to do Dare afterwards, didn't he?
dared to have an unsuccessful career in the UK playing shit music. Like.
Well,
Well,
I
they're
mean,
not that bad. Like they're just like an FM style affair, aren't they? Like
poor old Michael Kiske looks a bit like a thumb now, a sort of sunburnt thumb.
it's terrifying, isn't it? Like because like fair enough. I guess I would say that around the time even of Pink Bubbles and stuff, would he been like in his mid-20s or late 20s? Like,
Well, he was quite a sex symbol for
oh
keeping.
yeah,
You know?
but that's what I'm saying is that's the terrifying thing is in like if he is 60 now, like in 20 years, am I going to look like a thumb as well? Like, let me just replace the hair. Hey, buddy.
It's probably it, though. Hang on.